Shalom, and welcome to What the Watchman Sees, a ministry that will sift through all of the social media noise to show you news of importance from the Most High's perspective. As watchmen, we are here both to warn of dangers and give biblical answers for dwelling in the secret place of the Most High during these times of confusion. Tell your family and friends to like, share, and subscribe as we delve into what Yahweh has for us, the apple of His eye. Let's get to work. Shalom, everyone. As promised, we are going to be spending this next few days talking about the last of the fall feast, and it's called Sukkot. It's a seven-day time of feast, and then on the eighth day it concludes. So what we're going to do first is just to read what the scriptures say about it, and we're going to be going to Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to start reading at verse 33. But before I actually begin the reading, if you go all the way to the beginning of Leviticus chapter 23, the title there is Feasts and Sabbath. Basically, the feast days that are spoken of in Scripture are more like the times that the Most High wants His people to meet either with Him or on behalf of what their relationship with their Creator is. So they're called feast days in that sense. Sometimes during the feast days, food is actually involved, and we're going to be talking about that too. As I mentioned, we're going to be taking this entire 7 days to specifically look at the Feast of Booths, or Sukkot. So that's what leads us to verse 33. We'll start there. The title is the Feast of Tabernacles. Leviticus chapter 23, starting at verse 33. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Feast of Tabernacles to Yahweh begins, and it continues for 7 days. On the first day, there shall be a sacred assembly. You must not do any regular work. For 7 days, you are to present a food offering to Yahweh. On the 8th day, you are to hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to Yahweh. It is a solemn assembly. You must not do any regular work. These are Yahweh's appointed feast, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for presenting food offerings to Yahweh, burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its designated day. These offerings are in addition to the offerings for Yahweh's Shabbat, and in addition to your gifts, to all your vow offerings, and to all free will offerings you give to Yahweh. On the 15th day of the 7th month, after you have gathered the produce of the land, you are to celebrate a feast to Yahweh for 7 days. There shall be complete rest on the first day, and also on the 8th day. On the first day, you are to gather the fruit of majestic trees, the branches of palm trees, and the boughs of leafy trees and of willows of the brook. And you are to rejoice before Yahweh, your Elohim, for 7 days. You are to celebrate. Verse 41. You are to celebrate this as a feast to Yahweh for 7 days each year. This is a permanent statute for the generations to come. You are to celebrate it in the 7th month. You are to dwell in booths for 7 days. All the native born of Israel must dwell in booths, so that your descendants may know that I made the Israelites dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. So Moses announced to the Israelites the appointed feast of Yahweh. So we're going to look in detail specifically about the Feast of Booths or Sukkot. Okay, so remember that scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. For everything there's a season and a time for everything under heaven. Well, when we look at the feast days, those are appointed times. So feast doesn't mean necessarily a banquet. It means a time appointed by the Most High for his people to be in remembrance of the relationship that they have with him, had with him, have with him, and will continue to have with him. So there's a season for all of that, and it goes through the entire what we call calendar year, but not the Gregorian calendar, the calendar year of the Hebrews, okay, or of Yasharel. So as we talked about the last time, the Most High placed his calendar in the heavens. He utilizes the sun, the moon, and the stars to indicate seasons or moed. All of the seasons are for contemplation, for evaluation, for introspection, consecration, and refocus. So each season is an appointed time. We're looking at the fall feast or the seasons, the seasons for reflection that begin in the fall. So we're looking specifically starting on the first day of the 7th month. You remember we talked about the Feast of Trumpets, and then on the 10th day of the 7th month, we talked about the Day of Atonement, and now we're going to be focused the next few days on the Feast of Tabernacles, which is also called Sukkot. Okay, so those were the scriptures that we just read. We're not going to read those again. Here's what we find. It is a time of joyous commemoration. We're going to go into that a little bit. It is actually the last of the 3 major fall feasts. We talked again about the Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and now we're looking at the Feast of Booths or the Feast of Tabernacles. By the way, a booth and a tabernacle are the same thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. This particular feast, being the 3rd of the 7th month, begins on the 15th day of the 7th month, and it continues for 7 days. The first day includes a solemn assembly. The nation was to do no work. So it is another Shabbat. Okay. And part of the instructions were that they were to gather fruit of the majestic trees. They were to present an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. So it included the tabernacle or the tent of meeting or the temple if the nation was already in the land, and that they were to live in booths for 7 days. There's a passage in Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 13 through 18 that talks about that. And then at the end, on the 8th day, there's another solemn assembly, another Shabbat, in other words. One of the things that we will find is that the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths that is called Sukkot, the true purpose has to do with the Most High and his people, and how he will always be with his people. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that too. We're going to take our time on this one, which is why we're going to use the entire week, because there's a lot to it. A good friend of mine did a response to the first one where he listed, for instance, all of the ways that this particular feast can be found not only in American culture, but in Christian and Christianity, and how it all points to Yeshua. So we're going to probably on the last day, we're going to look at the things that he shared with me, because I think that they are relevant, is very relevant to why the Most High wants this feast and why he designed it the way that he did. Okay. So, but as I just mentioned, overwhelmingly, we're looking for Yeshua in all of the feasts, but certainly in the Feast of Tabernacles. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this particular day, but you can see all of the scriptures that are focused or spoken of or hearkening back to the Feast of Tabernacles. It started out in Genesis, and I will mention that one. Genesis 33:17 talks about, remember that place where Jacob went after he reconciled with his brother Esau? It was a literal place, okay? When the children of Israel first came out of Egypt, their first destination was Sukkot. And in both of those situations, which is why I'm saying we're going to spend a lot more time on this, in both of those situations, it was where the Most High led them, because that's where the Most High is. So wherever we are led, the Most High has already gone before us. He's already there with us, and he's going to be behind us as well. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at these scriptures, because this is the soul of Sukkot. So on the first day of this solemn assembly, the first day of Sukkot is actually on the 15th day of the 7th month. Now, we went over this during the last session. What it does not say is that it's the 15th day of the first month. In Yasharel, the nation begins when Yah's people come out of Egypt. Okay. Now, the nation was being prepared before that, but it actually begins when the Most High is bringing his people out of Egypt. And the Most High told his people through Moses, this is going to be the beginning of months for you. And this that he was talking about was the time when the Passover was to be killed. That happened on the 14th day of the month. They were to choose the Passover. They were to choose the animal that was going to be sacrificed on the 10th day. And then on the 14th day, they were to actually slay the animal. Okay. So it was that month that the Most High said, this is the beginning of months for you. And that's why I'm saying that when we get to the fall feast, we're in the seventh month from that first day of the month. Okay. The first day, that first day of the year. So the first day of the year for Yah's people, it's when Passover happens. Those feast days are at the beginning of the year. These feast days that we're looking at now are at the midpoint, or a little bit past the midpoint in the 7th month. Okay. So on the 15th day of that 7th month, that's when the Feast of Tabernacles to the Most High begins. And that's what we want to spend the rest of our time in this brief session speaking about. These feasts did not come from human beings. These feasts were established for us as human beings, as we have a relationship with our Creator. So the feasts are actually of the Creator. They're to the Creator. Those appointed times, those Moedim, are times appointed by the Creator so that we can have a right relationship with the Creator, and therefore the feasts are actually to Yahuwah. And in this case, it begins and continues for 7 days. That number 7 keeps coming up, not in every feast, but it happens at the beginning of the of our year, and now it's happening again midway through, a little bit past midway through. It's a 7-day feast again. The first time it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which happens adjacent to Passover, because Passover is just the one day. Okay. But then 7 days after that, the nation is told to eat nothing but unleavened bread, or have no leavening in their house. Okay. So that happens for 7 days. It's almost like a mirror. Okay. So that's the first time it's mentioned. And now we're here looking at the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths, or Sukkot. Okay. So it says, on the first day there shall be a sacred assembly, which means that it's for more than just the individual, for more than just the individual families. This is a national feast. This is a national time of meeting the Most High. They commemorated it as a nation, because that's what he was creating. He was not creating a religion. He was creating a nation, which is why it's important for us to embrace that as we understand our relationship individually and collectively with the Most High. He's doing what he has always done. He's making his presence known to his people, and his people are a nation. So he tells us, as a nation, as individuals, as families, your work is not to be done on this day and during this time. During this time, you step back from your business as usual and you focus on me. Now, what we're going to find, though, is the way that we focus on the Most High after that first day is in celebration. We don't beat ourselves up for 7 days. We don't even fast for 7 days. There is something to be said for fasting on that first day, because that's when everything gets put aside. But if you look at verse 37, where it says, these are Yahuwah's appointed feasts, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for presenting offerings by fire to Yahuwah, so that we are bringing our offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, sacrifices, drink offerings, and it says each on its designated day. That's why we're taking this whole week. So these offerings are in addition to the offerings for Yahuwah's Sabbaths or Shabbats. In other words, what happens on the regular Shabbat, okay, the seventh day, so to speak. And in addition to your gifts, to all your vow offerings, and to all the free will offerings you give to Yahuwah. I wasn't going to start covering this, but this is probably a good time to say that as a nation, what you just read here This is an order of serving the Most High. When we talk about the order of service that we have relegated to Sunday morning from 10 to 12 or 11 to 1 or whatever, that's not the order of service. The order of service is what we were just looking at in verse 37 and 38 of Leviticus chapter 23 for Yah's people. Okay. In other words, he's telling us, here's how you serve me. And you serve me in the sacrificial protocols. Okay. Because all of this is centered around the tent of meeting as our people are in the desert. And once we get into Jerusalem, they're centered around the temple. So it has to do with burnt offerings. We bring our offerings for sin. See, all of this is about sin, and all of this is about continually cleansing ourselves and being this priestly nation. That's the order. So he's giving the nation of priests the order of their service, the order of our service. And he's doing that on a regular basis on the Shabbat, whenever we sin and we bring a sacrifice for our sin. And so the reason I was saying I was going to cover this later, but it's probably good to cover it now. When we move into the Most High's sanctuary, we always bring a gift. Whether it's we always bring an offering, and it's always the best that we have, from the best that we have. So he takes us at our best, and then he sanctifies that. That's why I'm saying it during this time. So the feast days are in addition to all of that, but they include all of that. And that's where we're looking at, and that's how we're looking at the Feast of Tabernacles. So it says, on the 15th day of the 7th month, after you have after you have gathered the produce of the land, you are to celebrate a feast to Yahuwah for 7 days. So part of the celebration or commemoration is gathering in the produce of the land. During this particular season, the land has already been harvested. As a matter of fact, if you've heard of the former rain and the latter rain, okay, so there during this particular month, the prayer is for rain so that we will have a bountiful harvest because we've already harvested. Okay, so the produce had already been harvested. The only thing that hadn't been harvested yet were the olives, where you make the olive oil that you put in the lamps. And that's why the scriptures say, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. The lamp is fueled by the olive oil. So it's during that time that the children of Yasharel were told to come together on this solemn feast day, the 15th day. Okay. And so again, it says there shall be complete rest on the first day and on the 8th day. So that's how we know that they would be called Shabbats. Okay. But not the 7th day Shabbat. This is specific. This specifically happens during the 7th month. And as we go through these next few days, one of the themes that the Most High is placing before us as his people is, you need to do it my way, not your way. So this is what the Most High gave his people. What he didn't say was do it during the 12th month. He didn't say do it during the first month. He said, do this during the 7th month, and not just any day of the 7th month, on the 15th day of the 7th month. So if we're going to do these things, why don't we try doing it the way he instructs us to do it? Because that's where the blessing is. The blessing isn't in the doing so much as it is in the doing what he said to do. All right. Which means obedience. And I know our people have a real problem with that word. And I get that. But when it comes to being servants of the Most High Yah, servants serve in obedience. Now, when we serve him in obedience, he exalts us into rulership. But we want to skip the service and go directly to the rulership, because that's what those that we emulate have done. They don't serve anybody. They just rule by force, usually. That's not how the Most High's people are supposed to operate. I'm straying a little bit away. So as we end up this session, we're only on that first day. It's a day of rejoicing, but it's also a day of a solemn assembly. How can you be solemn and rejoice at the same time? You can do that because the joy of Yahuwah is our strength. And he gives us joy regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in. Okay. Now, as we close this one, it says, this is a permanent statute for the generations to come. You are to celebrate it. Again, it says it when to celebrate it, in the 7th month. So we'll stop there, and we're going to again go deeper and deeper into this, the blessing that the Father has for us with this teaching that he has given. Okay, this is not my teaching. This comes from Scripture. But we are going to look at how other people who have digested this better than me have presented it, because the whole purpose is for the Most High's people to understand that there is a way that he has given us, the way of life that he has given us. Yes, Yeshua is that way. But everything here, Yeshua followed these things. And so even when we talk about how all of this relates to his tabernacling with us and how he will tabernacle with us throughout eternity, Yeshua did all of these things. Okay, he was a part of a people that did these things. So he didn't make things up, even though he had the authority to do it. He followed the instructions, which is what the Most High wants us as his people to do as well. So we give thanks to what the Father has shown us. Father, bless you and keep you. Father, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Father, lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom.